Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is for anyone out here watching this video. I'm Corey Lowe, and welcome to the Guard Your Heart podcast. Today, on this February evening, I hope you guys have all had a blessed day so far. I want to talk to you a little bit why you can't hear God's voice, why we struggle to hear God's voice. Now, in my previous video, a couple videos ago, I talked about how to hear God's voice. I talked about one of the things we need is to understand that the way God was presented and described and operated in the Bible is the same way that he operates today. We know that the foundation of the very earth itself was brought into existence by God speaking, by God using his voice and actually speaking. When he made land, he divided, he said, let the firmaments be divided. When he created the water, when he created light, he said, let there be light. When he made man, he said, let us make man in our own image. When he made the fowls of the air, he spoke it. Everything that was detailed and described was done in part through God speaking. Our God is a very audible God. He's a very audible God. So what happens that we go from God speaking constantly, consistently to nowadays when so many believers honestly say within themselves that they do not hear the voice of God? What is blocking them? What are they struggling with? So let's talk about a few of those issues. Number one, as I addressed in the previous video, I'll repeat it again. It's just, first of all, having the knowledge and understanding that God actually does speak to you as you and I speak to anyone else. When God created Adam and Eve, he said, be fruitful and multiply. He gave them commandments. He told them what to do. When God was looking for Adam, he said, Adam, where are you? He called out. He called out to him the same way that you call out to somebody when you see them on the block or you see them at work and you say hi or something like that. The same way you text somebody, where you at? You do an active calling out. So we need to understand that God does indeed speak. We need to have that knowledge. Number two, we need to actually believe it. So much of the reasons why we can't hear from God is because we do not believe, the Bible. We do not believe that God is still present, that God is still here, even though he is called an ever-present help. So if he is an ever-present help, if he is omnipresent, if he is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-seeing, we need to start believing that he can speak to us. Unbelief is so deadly and so cancerous to a Christian alone, let alone somebody who's never heard of Jesus. But a lot of Christians suffer from unbelief to the point where they can easily deny the very existence and power of God. The Bible talks about how Jesus could do few miracles in his hometown because they did not believe. They did not believe, so he could do very few miracles. That's insane. But that is how deadly and dangerous unbelief is. If you truly do not believe that God can speak to you, you can put a block up that will prohibit you from hearing God. And either two things will happen. Either you will see something in your life that will make you say, okay, I am open, or God will have to force that door open. You know, another thing we have to think about is our circumstances, our situation. Sometimes we are so comfortable in our possessions, we are so comfortable in our things that we can actively tune out the voice of God. The prophet Jeremiah, in the 22nd chapter, 21st verse, it says how I spoke to you in your prosperity. I spoke to you while you were well off. But you said, I will not listen. This has been your practice from your youth, that you have not obeyed my voice. Sometimes we allow ourselves to trust in our possessions, to trust in what's going on around us, trusting what we see, that we automatically cut off God. If you're listening to this right now, as I'm recording, just understand you have the ability to shut out God completely from your life if you choose to, because he gave you free will. You can do that. That's a very great feat that you're capable of. I encourage you not to do it. I beg you not to do it. I plead, I pray that you will not do it. But you have, all of us, we have the ability, the power to shut God out of our lives, to shut his voice away from us, to say, no, I don't want to hear you. No, I don't want to believe. No, I would rather trust in the things around me. I would rather trust in my possessions. I would rather trust in my hard work and my perseverance, in my job, in the money that I make, in the things that I can see, as opposed to hearing the voice of God. So far, we have unbelief. We have the things around us, our lives, our possessions, clouding us from hearing from God. Unbelief that God will not speak to us. A belief that he will not speak to us. Yes, I repeated myself. And also, so far, we have not understanding from reading his word that he does speak to us. So having no knowledge of it. Another reason why we struggle to hear from God is because of our environment. When you look at the prophet Samuel heard the voice of the Lord as a boy, as a child. And his mother, when Samuel was born, his mother made a vow before Samuel was born. Let me rephrase that if the Lord would bless her with a child, she would dedicate that child to God. And so she was blessed, and Samuel was born. And so she dedicated Samuel to the Lord. And Samuel ended up, even as a young child, living in the house of Eli, who was the current prophet and judge over Israel. So Eli was a righteous man of God who feared the Lord and stayed in the Lord's presence and ruled over Israel, trying to teach them in the fear of the Lord and the laws of the Lord. He was a judge over Israel. So Samuel was in an environment that allowed himself to be amongst godly principles, to be amongst godly things, to see what a godly lifestyle, what living a godly lifestyle looked like. He was not in a place of wickedness. He was not in a place of sinfulness or death or ungodliness. He was in a very wholesome, holy area. So he was in a safe space so where it would be easier for God's presence to be there and for God to reach out and speak to him. And one night, as a boy, the Lord did so. He called out to Samuel 3 times. And eventually Samuel was told by Eli, hey, when you hear that voice, say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So not only was he in a nurturing place to learn about the Lord and to hear from God, he was also instructed what to do once he heard. So our environment, our surroundings, where we're at, who we associate ourselves with, it can be detrimental or it can be key to us hearing from God. If you're in an environment that is sinful and ungodly, it's going to make hearing from God harder, because everywhere you're around, everywhere you're at, if it represents the opposite of who God is and what he stands for, is going to make hearing from him very difficult. It's not the same as being in church or being in wholesome, even safe environments in general, even just a nice, peaceful environment. It's a big difference. When God called Abraham, he told Abraham to leave his family and get out of there. Even Abraham himself had to relocate and distance himself from his surroundings and his environment so that God could not only speak to him And Abraham could learn of the Lord and become eventually the father of many nations and a friend of God. But he had to speak to him. But he had to leave. He had to get out of there, because the environment that he was in would not be conducive for him to hear the Lord consistently and to grow with the Lord. It's really hard to hear from God when you're in a hellish environment, when you're not in the best place. So you have to change your environment. You have to find a way to change your environment somehow, whether it be distancing yourself from certain individuals or turning off certain things, shutting out certain things. You have to take control of your environment and create an environment that's more conducive to hearing from God. Another reason we struggle to hear from God sometimes is because we just have too much going on. We got noises coming from this. We got noises coming from your job, from the family, from your kids, from friends, from relationships. We got so many things, TV shows, hobbies, so many things battling for your attention that you're no longer putting focus on God. It's very easy to allow life itself to get in the way and make it hard for you to hear from God. The Bible gives a clear example of that when Elijah was trying to hear from the Lord and a fire happened, and the Bible teaches us that the Lord is not in the fire. Earthquake passed. The Lord was not in an earthquake. But when he spoke to Elijah, he spoke in a small, still, quiet voice that symbolizes how you need to sometimes get away from the loud, big things. You need to quiet out all the things around you and listen and wait. You need to sometimes go away from those things. I've said many times how Jesus would often go away to pray. He would often leave his disciples, leave the crowds, and he would just go pray and spend time with the Lord. You need to separate yourself from what's going on sometimes and get into a quiet, safe space and just allow time for prayer, time for worship, time for meditating on the word. Sometimes God can't talk to you because you got too much going on right now. Too much noise is going on. Too many factors, too many people, too many things. And so God's just another thing on that list. It's like, no, I need you to go away. I need you to turn that off. And then I'll speak to you in the quiet. I'll speak to you in the peace. Go find some peace. Then I'll speak to you. So think about these things. That's all for today. As always, please share, subscribe, and as always, let's end in prayer. Send me your prayer requests. Lord, quiet our lives so that we may hear your voice ever stronger. Enlighten us, increase our knowledge of you so that we may learn to hear your voice. Take away our unbelief. And even as the man cried out to Jesus, help our unbelief so that we can believe that we can hear your voice, so that way we can hear your voice much more stronger. Guide us and lead us and protect us as always, Father, in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Thank you all for listening.